Welcome to the Albuquerque Journal's Fast Break High School Basketball Show with your host, James Yodice. This show is sponsored by Western New Mexico University.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Albuquerque Journal's podcast, high school basketball podcast. It is called Fast Break. My name is James Yodice. I am the high school sports editor at the Albuquerque Journal. We're down to just our last couple of basketball-related podcasts this week, although today's podcast is going to cover 5 different sports to some degree or another. Actually, 6 now that I think about it. So we've got a lot of ground to cover today. We're going to start with basketball. I've got some other things I'm going to get into a little bit later in the podcast, but we'll start with basketball. We're into district tournament week. It is Wednesday afternoon, February 28th, as I sit down and record today. So we are pretty much right in the middle of district tournament week. We're into these second-round games now, a couple of semifinals in some of the smaller districts. So this is all leading up to district championship games coming up either on Friday or Saturday. Most of them are Saturday. We do have a couple of them on Friday. And I wanted to give you a quick rundown. So if you're planning to watch any basketball this week, Volcano Vista, the state's best team, they will be home on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, I believe, for the District 1-5A championship game. The District 2-5A game is going to be hosted by West Mesa. West Mesa beat La Cueva the other night, 56-53, in a playoff game for first place in that district. So West Mesa will host the final. That is Saturday evening. Los Lunas is hosting the District 5-5A championship game. That is Saturday as well. Highland won a playoff game on Monday night against St. Pius, 49-48. So Highland is the number 1 seed and the host for the district tournament championship game later in the week. And then we have Valley, the number 1 team in Class 4A, which is hosting the District 6-4A game later in the week on Saturday as well. On the girls' side, Volcano Vista is hosting the 1-5A final. I believe that game is Friday night, I believe. Sandia's girls are the number 1 seed in 2-5A. They'll be hosting on Saturday. Albuquerque High's girls won a playoff game against Los Lunas the other night. So Albuquerque High has the number 1 seed in District 5-5A, with Los Lunas being the 2 seed. St. Pius, which has had a really good season and is certainly going to be in the mix for a state title next month. They will be the number 1 seed and host the district tournament final in District 5-4A. And then the Albuquerque Academy girls are hosting the championship game in District 6-4A. So all these championship games will be going on Friday and Saturday. And we certainly have some other teams in some of the lower levels. Manal's a good example. Legacy Academy's boys. We got some other teams in some of the 3A and lower districts that are still alive and fighting to get into a tournament final. I want to get to a couple of basketball notes. Bella Hines, who we talk about almost weekly, I think, just recently in the last few days, hit another numerical milestone in a year in which she's had several, including reaching 2,000 points. She is now El Dorado High School's all-time leading scorer, male or female. Excuse me. She passed Cullen Neal on that list within the last week. So if you're doing a combined scoring list, Bella has gotten there ahead of Cullen in just a little under 3 seasons. That was sort of expected, and of course Bella is well on her way to hitting the top 10 all time in the state. Conceivably before the end of the season, probably not. She probably will crack the top 10 very early in her senior season, and then she'll be on her way, and we'll see where she maxes out. So. As always, I like to mention when kids hit certain milestones. We mentioned Bella. We had a few boys hit that 1,000-point milestone over the last couple of weeks. I wanted to send some shout-outs to some of these guys, starting with Santiago Gonzalez, Rio Grande High School's big man. A really good player, kind of an under-the-radar player because the Ravens have had a tough season, so we haven't heard a lot about him. But Santiago has reached not just 1,000 points for his career at Rio Grande, but also 500 rebounds. Marquise Renfro from Atrisco Heritage has also reached 1,000 points. Jaden Johnson, I'm not sure if we mentioned him last week or not, from Rio Rancho has gotten to 1,000 points. And Lucas Turner, Santa Fe High School's really good guard, has gotten to 1,000 points as well. So congratulations to those 4 kids. Also, I wanted to amend something I said last week. I think I said Zach Hull from Cleveland, the coach for the Storm, had already gotten his 200th win. I misspoke. He actually had hit 199 by the time we did the podcast last week. He hit 200 the following night against Rio Rancho. So he is at 200, but he reached it in a win against Rio Rancho, not against Cibola. So I wanted to make that slight correction. Of course, we were talking about the district championship games coming up. Sunday will, of course, be Selection Sunday for the state tournament. So the New Mexico Activities Association, I believe, is going to do their announcement starting at 5 p.m., which you'll be able to watch live at 5 o'clock, and they'll go through the 10 brackets, 5 boys, 5 girls. They'll go through them pretty quickly. So we should have the entire field in every division by 5:30, quarter to 6 on Sunday. So I know we're all looking forward to that. Of course, we'll talk next week about some of the big storylines. The first round of state isn't until Friday, March 8th, I believe. That'll be for the girls, and then the boys play their first round games on Saturday, March 9th. So next week's podcast, we're going to preview extensively the first round games for boys and girls. We're not going to do that today. But, of course, we're all looking forward to Selection Sunday. I think that's a day we all look forward to, same as college basketball fans look forward to their Selection Sunday. So that ought to be a lot of fun. I want to change gears for a minute because we got some other sports we need to get into. We had the state wrestling and swimming competitions held over the weekend. State swimming, El Dorado boys went back-to-back. They were the best team all year, and they were so deep. They've got a couple of Division I swimmers on this team, Cole Bettis, Nolan Arnholt, who are both going to the University of Utah, as it turns out. They had a big meet. Los Alamos finished second. Cottonwood Classical Prep, which is literally right across the street here from the Journal, won the small schools title. On the girls' side, Albuquerque Academy won its 8th straight state title, which is a record, and the 24th overall for the program. So the Chargers continue to dominate in the pool, whether it's the boys or the girls or both of them together. So the girls have now won 8 titles in a row. El Dorado's girls finished second.
Education and training at Western New Mexico University is accessible from every corner of the land of enchantment, providing limitless opportunities for success for more than a century. And now, through the New Mexico Opportunity Scholarship, tuition and fees are covered for anyone looking to start or start over. Along with free tuition, books are always included for every WNMU student. Assuring your only worry is how far you can actually go. Lift off toward your future and endless potential at WNMU today.
So, moving on to wrestling, which was held out at the Rio Rancho Event Center. Let's give a shout out to the team champions this year. That would be the Volcano Vista boys in 5A, who went back-to-back. The Bloomfield boys, who won the Class 4A through 1A division. And the Cleveland girls, who won state for the first time. Mira, I believe, had won the first 3 or 4 state tournaments in girls wrestling. Volcano Vista won it last year. Cleveland wins it this year. Wrestling is one of those sports in which there really is a tremendous amount of domination by kids who live here in the Albuquerque metro area. To wit, 12 of the 13 state brackets at wrestling were won by kids who live here in Albuquerque. There was a kid named Cameron Hernandez from Hobbs who won a state title. The other 12 weight divisions all went to kids either from Rio Rancho or Albuquerque or Los Lunas. So a shout out to all these kids. I'm not going to mention everybody, but there are a couple I did want to mention for sure, including 2 kids from La Cueva who both finished undefeated. That would be Mason Posa, a junior who finished unbeaten at 215 pounds. Mark Handy, their heavyweight, he's a junior as well. And these 2 kids are being heavily recruited in football as well. Both these guys are going to end up going to a Division I program at some point, but they were just as dominant on the mat. There were some other good stories, too. Volcano Vista, the boys champion, had a couple of state champions. Jonathan Romero at 133 pounds. Lorenzo Gallegos at 145 pounds. Volcano Vista put 8 kids into the finals, which is an astonishing number. 8 out of 13, they had at least 1 kid in the finals. And they placed at every single weight, which is very hard to do at state where you have the deepest field in relation to New Mexico competition. So those 2 won state. And there was another kid who I wanted to mention real quick, Zay Flores, a senior from El Dorado. He won a state title. And this is significant because El Dorado, which used to be a powerhouse in wrestling many years ago, has been off the radar for a while. The Rio Rancho schools surged, and more recently, schools like Volcano, La Cueva, Atrisco Heritage, Rio Grande to a certain degree have all been very strong in wrestling. El Dorado hasn't been a factor in the team standings, but Zay Flores, a senior, won a state title. That was the first state title for any El Dorado wrestler since 2009. That was a nice story. I wrote about him in my story the other day. So congrats to all of those winners. We'll talk about 4A here in a second. Although Bloomfield won the state title, Aztec finished second, Belen, the defending champion, finished third. We did have a couple of notes I wanted to mention. First of all, a pair of 5-time state champions in wrestling, which is very rare. One of the rarest things you have in high school athletics. Bryson Valdez from Aztec, 121 pounds. He won his 5th state title. And about 45 minutes later, Nico Trujillo from Cobre at 160 pounds. He won his 5th state title. So huge shout out to both of them. It's tough enough to be a multiple state champion. To win 5 is just an astonishing achievement. So we want to congratulate both Bryson Valdez of Aztec and Nico Trujillo of Cobre for joining that 5-timers club. From the metro area, we had several kids win state. Augustine Lopez from Belen at 189 pounds. Valentin Papadiuc, I hope I pronounced that right, from St. Pius, won the state title at 139 pounds. And Amiri Mumba of Highland, he won the state title at 172 pounds. Amiri has been one of the metro area's best athletes, actually been one of the state's best athletes since we started the school year. He had a fantastic football season for the Hornets, rushing the ball. He was one of the state's top running backs, really in any class, but certainly in Class 5A, which is where Highland plays in football. And he capped off his wrestling season with a state championship. So I was telling somebody the other day, I'm already thinking about my list of kids who are under consideration for the Journal's overall Male Athlete of the Year. And, some of the names would be familiar to you. Josh Jackson from El Dorado, for example, football and baseball. Mason Posa, of course. Elijah Brody, my choice last year, is certainly on the list. Cameron Dyer, the La Cueva quarterback. He's having a good basketball season, was fantastic in football. And Amiri Mumba, I think, would be on this short list, too. I don't know who it's going to be, but Amiri is somebody I'm certainly looking at. And, he's just been off the charts excellent for Highland the entire school year. So a shout out to him in particular. Now, real quick, I want to recap the girls wrestling tournament. So Cleveland wins it all, beats Atrisco Heritage, I think, by 7.5 points in the team standings. One girl I wanted to make a specific mention of is Jaden Meadows, a sophomore from Sandia High School, a sophomore. She went undefeated at 152 pounds. She went undefeated as a freshman, too. I don't think it's a stretch to say that she is one of, if not the most dominant girls wrestler in the state. There are other really good ones. Loriana Pestua from Miamura is a 4-time state champion. She was excellent. She won another state title undefeated over the weekend. Jaden Meadows from the metro area. Jaden Meadows has probably been the most dominant girls wrestler, I would say, the last 2 years, honestly. And when I interviewed her after she won state the other day, she said her goal was simply, I want to win 4 state titles for Sandia, and then I want to think about trying to qualify for the Olympics, which would be 2028 in Los Angeles. So you got to love that kind of ambition. And, boy, she's just been completely dominant. So few girls are even able to take her into a second period, let alone have a chance to beat her. So we certainly want to congratulate Jaden. So we had state swimming last week and state wrestling. We'll have state basketball coming up next week. We're going to keep it relatively short today. I wanted to mention as well that we are already underway in prep baseball and prep softball. Both of those seasons have already begun. And the other sports will be coming on board here very soon. So I've already written a lengthy Metrocentric baseball preview that appeared in the Journal on Tuesday morning, and I'm working on a softball preview that's going to run a little bit later in the week, I think on Friday. So, like I said, these stories tend to be very heavy toward the schools here in the Albuquerque metro area, but both those seasons began track, golf, and tennis are right on their heels. So we're going to have a spring. I mentioned this before, but we're going to have a spring podcast once basketball is over. The state basketball tournament ends on March 16th, and then we'll do a recap podcast early the next week. And then I think we're also going to probably pop in with a first spring podcast, and we'll have one of those every week through the end of the school year. So we're looking forward to getting into some other areas as well. And one of my goals, which I haven't fulfilled yet, is to have Gianna Raymer from El Dorado here in our studio. Of course, we talked about her quite a bit during cross-country season. She'll be on the track as well, representing El Dorado, the Hoover Middle School 8th grader. She is one of my primary goals for the spring season, is to get her in here. So I'm going to cross my fingers on that one. I'd love to talk to her and just have her be relaxed here in the studio. I always interview her after a race. I'd love to have her in here in street clothes where we can just relax and have a nice chat. She's such a great kid. So I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that in the spring, and I hope you'll keep following us. As I said, we're going to talk a lot, probably exclusively, about state basketball next week on the podcast. We'll have 8 first-round games in all of the classes. We're talking about 16-team divisions, so 8 games, 40 games for the girls, 40 for the boys. On Friday and Saturday, so a total of 80 games next weekend, and we're gonna break down as much of it as we can, both inside the metro area and outside. So I hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, last thing before I go, for basketball fans, if you're looking to get a tournament pass for the second week of state, actually for the entire state tournament, really, you have to get those by phone at the New Mexico Activities Association. You only have until March 7th, which is a week from Thursday, a week from tomorrow, as I sit here, to get your passes. I think they're $155. But, if you're talking about 7 days of basketball, and often it's 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. every day, it's actually not such a terrible deal. So if you're looking to get a pass to get you into all the games from the first round through the championship games, that's the best way to go. In the meantime, we're going to head out. You can find my podcast at abqjournal.com. You can find it on YouTube. Same, of course, with all of Jeff Grammer's very popular Lobo men's basketball podcasts. And boy, man, he has had so much to talk about this year. And we will be back next week. As always, thanks for spending some time with me. And as always, I encourage you to read, hear, watch, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.